The Holy Roman Empire stands as one of history's most enduring and complex political entities, spanning over a millennium from 962 to 1806 CE, neither holy, nor Roman, nor truly an empire in its later centuries, as Voltaire famously quipped. This confederation of Central European territories represented a unique attempt to revive the glory of ancient Rome while adapting to medieval Christian ideals and Germanic tribal traditions. The empire's roots trace back to Charlemagne's coronation as Emperor of the Romans by Pope Leo III on Christmas Day 800 CE. This momentous event symbolically transferred imperial authority from Byzantium to the West, establishing the precedent for papal involvement in imperial legitimacy. However, the Carolingian Empire fragmented after Charlemagne's death, dividing among his grandsons through the Treaty of Verdun, 843 CE. The true foundation of what would become the Holy Roman Empire occurred in 962 CE, when Otto I of Germany was crowned emperor by Pope John XII. Otto had already demonstrated his power by defeating the Magyars at the Battle of Lechfeld, 955 CE, and establishing German dominance in Central Europe. His imperial coronation marked the beginning of the Ottonian Renaissance and the formal establishment of the empire that would endure for nearly 9 centuries. Under the Ottonians, the empire experienced its first golden age. Otto I, Otto II, and Otto III expanded imperial territories into Italy and Eastern Europe while fostering a revival of learning and arts. The empire's unique character emerged during this period, combining Germanic kingship traditions with Roman imperial concepts and Christian theology. The Salian dynasty continued this expansion and consolidation. Henry III, 1039 to 1056, reached the height of imperial power, deposing 3 rival popes and appointing his own candidates. However, this interference in church affairs would soon trigger a massive conflict that would define imperial politics for centuries. The most defining conflict of the early empire began when Pope Gregory VII challenged Emperor Henry IV's right to appoint church officials. This investiture controversy reflected deeper tensions between temporal and spiritual authority. The dramatic confrontation at Canossa, 1077 CE, where Henry IV allegedly stood barefoot in the snow for 3 days seeking papal forgiveness, symbolized the complex relationship between empire and papacy. The conflict was formally resolved by the Concordat of Worms, 1122 CE, which distinguished between spiritual investiture, controlled by the Church, and temporal investiture, controlled by the emperor. However, imperial papal tensions would continue to shape empire politics throughout its existence. The Hohenstaufen dynasty brought the empire to its medieval peak under Frederick Barbarossa, 1155 to 1190, and Frederick II, 1220 to 1250. Barbarossa epitomized the medieval ideal of knightly emperor, leading the Third Crusade and establishing imperial authority in both Germany and Italy. His reign saw the formal adoption of the title Holy Roman Empire around 1157 CE. Frederick II, known as Stupor Mundi, Wonder of the World, represented the empire's cosmopolitan character. Ruling from Sicily, he created a brilliant court that synthesized Arabic, Greek, and Latin learning. His conflicts with the papacy, however, demonstrated the empire's inherent structural problems. His excommunication and the papal characterization of him as the Antichrist revealed how imperial papal conflicts could destabilize the entire system. The dynasty's end in 1254 CE initiated the Great Interregnum, a period of imperial weakness and fragmentation that lasted until Rudolf I's election in 1273 CE. Rudolf I of Habsburg's election in 1273 CE began the gradual Habsburg accumulation of power within the empire. Initially chosen as a weak compromise candidate, Rudolf proved surprisingly effective, securing Austria as the Habsburg family's hereditary domain. This acquisition would form the foundation of Habsburg power for centuries. The empire's elective nature was formalized through the Golden Bull of 1356, issued by Charles IV. This constitutional document established 7 electoral princes who would choose the emperor, the archbishops of Mainz, Trier and Cologne, the King of Bohemia, the Count Palatine of the Rhine, the Duke of Saxony, and the Margrave of Brandenburg. The Golden Bull remained the empire's fundamental constitutional law until its dissolution. Under Maximilian I, 1493 to 1519, the empire underwent significant administrative reforms while maintaining its decentralized character. Maximilian's marriage diplomacy brought the wealthy Burgundian Netherlands into Habsburg control, while his son Philip's marriage to Joanna of Castile would eventually unite the Spanish and Austrian Habsburg lines under Charles V. Charles V inherited an empire spanning from Spain to Austria, from the Netherlands to southern Italy. His election as Holy Roman Emperor in 1519 created a European superpower that threatened the balance of power and provoked conflicts with France and the Ottoman Empire. The Protestant Reformation posed the greatest internal challenge to the empire. Martin Luther's challenge to papal authority in 1517 quickly spread throughout German territories, creating religious divisions that aligned with existing political tensions between emperor and princes. Charles V's attempts to suppress Protestantism at the attempts to suppress Protestantism at the Fevre Diet of Worms 1521, and through military action proved unsuccessful. The Peace of Augsburg 1555 represented a compromise that allowed German princes to choose between Catholicism and Lutheranism for their territories, cuius regio, ius religio. While temporarily stabilizing religious conflict, this settlement further weakened imperial unity and strengthened princely autonomy. The 30 Years' War began as a religious conflict, but evolved into a European-wide struggle that devastated Central Europe. Ferdinand II's attempt to re-Catholicize the empire provoked Protestant resistance, while foreign powers France, Sweden, and Denmark intervened to prevent Habsburg hegemony. The Peace of Westphalia, 1648, fundamentally transformed the empire's structure. The settlement recognized the virtual independence of German princes, allowed Calvinism alongside Catholicism and Lutheranism, and gave France and Sweden territorial concessions within the empire. The emperor's authority was reduced to largely ceremonial functions, while the empire became a loose confederation of autonomous states. Following Westphalia, real power within the empire shifted to individual princes who built absolute estates within their territories. Prussia under the Hohenzollern dynasty emerged as Austria's primary rival, while Bavaria, Saxony, and other Middle states pursued independent foreign policies. The War of Spanish Succession 1701–1714 demonstrated the empire's internal divisions when Bavaria allied with France against the emperor. The rise of Prussia under Frederick the Great further challenged Habsburg leadership, particularly during the Silesian Wars 1740–1763. Despite political fragmentation, this period witnessed remarkable cultural achievements. The German Enlightenment flourished in various courts, while composers like Bach, Handel, and Mozart created masterworks. Universities in Göttingen, Halle, and Vienna became centers of learning that influenced European intellectual development. Joseph II, 1765–1790, attempted radical Enlightenment reforms throughout his territories, seeking to modernize administration, reduce church influence, and improve peasant conditions. His efforts to centralize and rationalize imperial administration, however, provoked resistance from traditionalists and regional elites. The French Revolution's outbreak in 1789 posed an existential threat to the empire's traditional order. Revolutionary France's declaration of war against Austria in 1792 began a series of conflicts that would ultimately destroy the old imperial system. The French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars systematically dismantled the Holy Roman Empire. French victories led to territorial losses, the secularization of ecclesiastical states, and the mediatization of smaller principalities. The Treaty of Campo Formio, 1797, and subsequent agreements transferred vast territories to France and its allies. Napoleon's creation of the Confederation of the Rhine in 1806, comprising 16 German states under French protection, made the empire's continued existence impossible. On August 6, 1806, Francis II formally dissolved the Holy Roman Empire, retaining only his hereditary Austrian territories as Emperor Francis I of Austria. The Holy Roman Empire's economy remained predominantly agricultural throughout its existence, with over 90% of the population engaged in farming until the 18th century. The empire's decentralized structure created a patchwork of economic systems, from the manorialism of eastern territories to the more commercialized regions of the Rhineland and northern Italy. Trade flourished despite political fragmentation, facilitated by the empire's extensive river systems and strategic location between northern and southern Europe. The Hanseatic League dominated Baltic and North Sea commerce, while cities like Augsburg, Nuremberg, and Frankfurt became major financial centers. The empire's silver mines in Saxony and Bohemia provided crucial currency for European trade networks. Urban development varied significantly across imperial territories. Italian cities maintained their commercial prominence and political autonomy, while German towns received imperial charters that granted self-governance and market rights. The growth of free imperial cities created islands of republican government within the monarchical system, fostering bourgeois culture and proto-democratic institutions. Social stratification remained rigid but complex. The nobility ranged from powerful prince-electors to impoverished knights, Reichsritter, who held direct imperial fiefs. The peasantry endured varying degrees of serfdom, with conditions generally worsening in eastern territories while improving in western regions. The Peasants' War of 1524 to 1525, the largest popular uprising in European history before the French Revolution, demonstrated the social tensions inherent in imperial society. The empire served as a crucible for European cultural development, synthesizing diverse traditions into distinctive regional cultures. The Ottonian Renaissance of the 10th century revived classical learning and artistic production, while the 12th century Renaissance fostered vernacular literature and architectural innovation. Gothic architecture reached its zenith in imperial territories, with cathedrals in Cologne, Strasbourg, and Vienna representing the empire's spiritual aspirations. The empire's courts became centers of courtly culture, producing epic literature like the Nibelungenlied and Parsifal that would influence European literature for centuries. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in Mainz around 1440 revolutionized knowledge transmission throughout the empire. German became a major literary language, while Latin remained the lingua franca of scholarship and administration. Universities founded in Prague, 1348, Vienna, 1365, Heidelberg, 1386, and Leipzig, 1409, became centers of scholastic learning and later humanist scholarship. The empire's religious diversity after the Reformation fostered intellectual competition and innovation. Protestant regions emphasized literacy and education, while Catholic territories promoted Baroque art and architecture. This religious pluralism, though often conflictual, created a dynamic cultural environment that produced figures like Dürer, Krone, Grunewald, and later Bach, Handel, and Mozart. The empire's military structure reflected its federal character. The emperor commanded limited direct forces, relying instead on feudal obligations and the imperial army, Reichsarmee, assembled from territorial contingents. This system proved increasingly inadequate against centralized monarchies like France and the Ottoman Empire. The empire's Italian campaigns from the 10th through 13th centuries demonstrated both imperial ambitions and military limitations. Frederick Barbarossa's 6 Italian expeditions achieved temporary success but ultimately failed to establish permanent imperial control. The empire's inability to maintain unified military command contributed to its gradual retreat from Italy and eventual focus on German affairs. Technological innovation occurred within individual territories rather than empire-wide. Saxon mining techniques, Bavarian artillery production, and Prussian military reforms developed independently, reflecting the empire's decentralized nature. The 30 Years' War revealed the devastating consequences of this military fragmentation, as foreign armies repeatedly invaded imperial territory while German forces fought each other. The empire's administrative structure evolved from personal rule to increasingly institutionalized governance. The imperial diet, Reichstag, developed from occasional assemblies into a permanent institution with 3 colleges: electors, princes, and imperial cities. This representative system, though limited to nobility and urban elites, prefigured later parliamentary developments. The Imperial Supreme Court, Reichskammergericht, established in 1495, represented a crucial legal innovation. This institution applied Roman law throughout the empire, creating legal uniformity despite political fragmentation. The court's procedures emphasized written documentation and legal precedent, contributing to the development of modern legal systems. Imperial circles, Reichskreis, administrative districts created in the early 16th century, provided regional coordination for defense, taxation, and law enforcement. These circles demonstrated the empire's ability to adapt federal structures to changing needs, while maintaining local autonomy. The empire's legal pluralism accommodated diverse legal traditions, from Germanic customary law to Roman civil law to canon law. This complexity created opportunities for legal innovation, but also generated conflicts of jurisdiction that weakened imperial authority. The Holy Roman Empire's international position evolved from European hegemon to balance of power participant. Under the Ottonians and early Salians, the empire dominated European politics, with emperors arbitrating disputes between kingdoms and leading crusades. The empire's relationship with France remained consistently antagonistic, beginning with competition over Lotharingia and Italian territories. The Habsburg-Valois rivalry intensified these conflicts, with France systematically supporting imperial enemies from Turkish sultans to German Protestant princes. Eastern relations centered on conflicts with Hungary, Poland, and especially the Ottoman Empire. The Turkish siege of Vienna, 1529-1683, marked the empire's role as Christendom's bulwark against Islamic expansion. These conflicts drained imperial resources while demonstrating the empire's continued relevance as a defensive alliance. The empire's diplomatic influence derived from its constitutional complexity and religious significance. Foreign powers could intervene in imperial affairs through alliances with individual princes, while the emperor's traditional role as defender of Catholicism provided international leverage even when imperial power declined. The Holy Roman Empire's dissolution marked the end of medieval Europe's most enduring political institution. Its complex federal structure, balancing imperial authority with local autonomy, would influence later German political development, including the German Confederation 1815 to 1866 and the modern Federal Republic of Germany. The empire's attempt to synthesize Roman imperial tradition, Christian universalism, and Germanic particularism created a unique political culture that emphasized negotiation, compromise, and legal procedure over centralized authority. While often criticized for inefficiency and weakness, the empire provided a framework for Central European civilization that fostered remarkable cultural and intellectual achievements. The Holy Roman Empire's thousand-year existence demonstrates both the power of political ideals and the challenges of governing diverse populations across vast territories. Its complex legacy continues to influence European integration efforts and debates about federalism, subsidiarity, and supranational governance in the contemporary world.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more engaging historical content.